President Trump unleashed more of his thoughts about the election results on social media yesterday. Speaking from the White House and calling it, quote, maybe the most important speech of his life, the president posted a 46-minute video on Facebook packed with unfounded claims that the Democrats cheated him out of a second term, and then released a 2-minute version of the speech on Twitter. Our Paula Reed has the latest.
If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
But the president is wrong. Judges in courts across the country have said the campaign has not provided evidence of widespread voter fraud, and Joe Biden is the president-elect. Neither of those facts deterred the president, who released the 46-minute White House-produced video on Facebook Wednesday, filled with false accusations about the election.
We used to have what was called Election Day. Now we have election days, weeks and months.
The president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, made similar baseless claims in Michigan yesterday evening.
This election was stolen by mail-in ballots.
He appeared with witnesses who weren't under oath and urged lawmakers to award the state's electoral votes, which Mr. Biden won, to the president instead.
All I can tell you is, we let him get away with this. I don't know what happens after this.
But the hearing was held in Michigan's State House, not a court of law. A judge previously deemed some of the witnesses' accounts as not credible. Just a day earlier, Mr. Trump's own attorney general became the highest-ranking administration official to publicly dispute the president's claim and said federal investigators had not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. Barr reportedly had an intense meeting with President Trump on Tuesday over the Attorney General's remarks undercutting Mr. Trump's fraud claims. The White House refused to say whether the president still has confidence in Barr.
The president, if he has any personnel announcements, will be the first to know it.
And while the president and his lawyers cried foul on the election, the president-elect was focused on the economic crisis he'll inherit in January.
We're likely to lose another 250,000 people dead between now and January.
Mr. Biden held a virtual roundtable with people struggling economically amid the pandemic.
This isn't a political game. This impacts on people's real lives and families. It impacts on all of you, all of us. And we need to get help out the door as soon as we can.
All right, to talk about this and more, Paula Reed is joining us from the White House. Paula, when the president puts his hand on a Bible and holds his right hand up, he swears to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. The image of the president in the diplomatic reception room with the lectern there and the seal of the presidency of the United States and understanding what that oath is, it was really, really surreal for him to call this the most important speech he's ever made, given that we have 270,000 people who have died of coronavirus, and perhaps experts are saying we could get up to 400,000. Not a word mentioned about the coronavirus. So why is he putting this video out?
What was also so surprising, Vlad, about that video is this is the kind of event where he would normally invite the White House press corps in. They'd bring cameras, there'd be reporters. It would get reported out across various platforms. But instead of inviting reporters in, he shot this himself and put it on Facebook. And that suggests that he was willing to sacrifice a little bit of coverage so as not to have to answer questions, because it appears increasingly he does not have a lot of answers to defend himself in these accusations that he's making. They just do not have the evidence to support these widespread allegations of fraud. So far, judges across the country have been dismissing these, but we also saw the president's personal attorney yesterday. He had a press conference, and then he was there speaking to legislators in the state of Michigan. He brought witnesses continuing to make these same false statements, these same allegations that judges say are not supported by evidence. The lucky for Rudy Giuliani that this was not under oath, because, of course, a presidential pardon would not cover perjury at the state level.
So there have been a number of reports indicating that the president is none too happy with Bill Barr, since he confirmed that the Justice Department has not been able to find any evidence of widespread fraud. What can you tell us about this meeting between Trump and Barr, and whether or not his job is secure for the next, I don't know, couple of months?
So on Tuesday, the Attorney General was here at the White House. Not terribly unusual. The Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General frequently visit the White House for various meetings, but he was here for several hours. And this visit came shortly after he told the Associated Press that he had not seen his investigators look at complaints, but they had not seen any evidence of widespread voter fraud that would have changed the outcome of the election. This completely contradicts the president and his attorney's argument about the outcome of the election. Now, we have learned from sources that the president also met with Barr while he was here. The president was quite angry about those comments to the Associated Press, and this meeting was described as tense. Now, in terms of the Attorney General's future, could he be fired? It's certainly possible, as it is for anyone here. The president is increasingly unpredictable. But the Attorney General and the president, they have had tense conversations about other issues before, and Barr lived to fight another day. But there are several issues here. It's not just voter fraud. It's also the president's frustration that all of these reviews that Barr has opened into these political cases that the president was interested in, that they have not yielded indictments or trials or the kinds of things that the president had hoped to see. So the president is clearly frustrated with his Attorney General. He's made it clear he's also frustrated with his FBI director. Whether they're fired, really only President Trump knows what will happen there.
And Paula, let's talk about this meeting with Dr. Hahn. Why was he summoned to the White House?
Well, our colleagues over at the Takeout podcast with Major Garrett, they spoke with Dr. Fauci a short time ago, and Dr. Fauci confirmed that Dr. Hahn, his colleague on the task force, was summoned here to the White House to explain why the authorization process has taken so long for this vaccine. And of course, the actual development of this vaccine has happened with record speed. Part of that is by sort of working around or getting exemptions for certain regulations. But then this approval process, the White House is just putting pressure on Dr. Hahn. There are people here at the White House who believe that Hahn maybe hasn't worked as fast as he could have on other aspects of COVID therapeutics, COVID treatments, the antibody test. Their theory, which they don't have evidence for, but their theory is that Hahn wanted to hurt the president's chances of re-election. So they were here putting pressure on him. Dr. Fauci says they believe that Dr. Hahn was able to deliver the message, was able to convince the White House that they are working at an appropriate speed. He was back again yesterday for another meeting, and he's still in the administration. He's still in the task force. He still has a job. So whatever he said to the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, apparently was able to convince him that he is not trying to intentionally undermine the president.
What is going on with the president today? What's on his schedule? He hasn't had he's had very few public scheduled events, though he did sort of pop up yesterday with that video.
You're right, Anne-Marie. It's a great question because when you look at his schedule, the closed press events that he has today, he's presenting the Medal of Freedom to football coach Lou Holtz. He also has a bill signing. These are the kinds of events that in the past, the president always would open up to cameras. He loved inviting the press into these events, getting the coverage, particularly when it comes to the Medal of Freedom, something he has bestowed on many high-profile Americans, including some of his close allies like Rush Limbaugh. But so far, these events are closed. We're watching to see if he opens them. But if he doesn't, it really is a sign that the president really just does not want to engage with the press at all. Again, it goes back to even if he likes the cameras, even if he likes the photos, he doesn't necessarily like questions from reporters right now.
No, he does not. No reporters, but a full slate of Christmas parties at the White House are in order.
Yes, the Christmas parties continue, Anne-Marie. It's just another example of do as we say, not as we do. You see all these pictures on social media, people not wearing masks, gathered in large groups, while Americans across the country continue to wonder whether they'll get any stimulus relief to help them through this holiday. Most Americans staying away from their families, from their traditional holiday plans, while here many top officials here in this administration and their supporters continue to hold these extremely lavish parties that they're attending in gowns, tuxedos, and no masks.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Paula, that we're entering into this dark period right now in the midst of this pandemic. And there have been some Democrats, too, that have been accused of disregarding the CDC rules, for sure. But we've continued to see this sort of display at the White House. And it almost strikes some people that the president really doesn't it's not clear that he still wants to be president. He just wants to win. And because they've sort of abdicated their responsibility, at least when it comes to the pandemic, in keeping Americans safe. In addition to protecting the Constitution and defending the Constitution of the United States, the president's most important role is protecting the American people. And if we are in a position right now where we're headed to 400,000 Americans who could succumb to this coronavirus by February, that's an astounding number. And we've heard so little from the president about that, about what he thinks about those numbers. Yes, he's touting the vaccine. Everybody is. Of course, it's wonderful news, and he should be credited for Operation Warp Speed. But, you know, there are people that are still dying here in this country.
Absolutely. Well, to the first point, of course, I cover the White House and the administration, which is why I'm specifically calling out their parties. But absolutely, if we were to roll the tape, there's plenty of Democratic leaders across this country and here in Washington who have also violated the rules that they're encouraging Americans to follow under great sacrifice for many families, especially many small businesses as well. When it comes to the president's desire to govern, particularly leading when it comes to COVID, it does appear that he has largely abdicated that responsibility. He has not really mentioned COVID or the mounting death toll in quite a while. And if you look at a lot of the data we have around why he lost the election, a large part of it appears to be his handling of COVID, and people were not happy with that. So if he is looking to 2024, it's unclear how he would change the hearts and minds of people by continuing to allow this pandemic to go on without clear leadership from the Oval Office. While Vice President Mike Pence is in Memphis today, he'll be leading a roundtable discussion on the vaccine. Even the Vice President has not been seen very often. We're not getting regular briefings from the task force, and there's certainly no coherent message about coronavirus coming out of this White House.
Paula Reed, thank you so much.